Welcome into the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure to check out 5reasonsports.com. That's spelled out F-I-V-E, reasonsports.com for all the latest Heat news. Also, the other South Florida teams, the Miami Dolphins dropped to 3-11 today, losing to the New York Giants. Also, obviously, we have Marlins news, Panther news, Hurricane news, and much, much more. And the other podcasts in our network are there too. 3 Yards Per Carry, 5 Rings Canes, Light Skinned Opinions, Balls Cast, Shula Bowl, and the rest of them. Before we get to today's episode, I want to tell you about something we've got coming up this Wednesday. So this Wednesday night, Heat Sixers, Culture v. Process. We're going to be at the Gold Club in Pompano Beach. It's not far from Sample Road, just off the power line, so not too far if you live somewhere in the Broward or Palm Beach area. If you want to make the trek up from Dade, we'll welcome you there too. But we're going to be there starting at about 6 o'clock. We're going to have T-shirt giveaways. Alf, you and I, we're going to record a podcast from where, Alf? Where are we?
Live from the stage.
Live from the stage. We are not going to give you the shirts off our backs. We will get.
I will be fully clothed. Don't worry.
That's right. That's part of the agreement actually with the Gold Club Pompano. So Gold Club Pompano, we're going to be there Wednesday. Here's the big thing about this. If you're a little concerned, can I get out for the night? What am I going to tell my significant other? Bring that person, because ladies get in free the entire night. So in free the entire night, all night long, all the way up to 2 a.m. Like I said, we'll be there starting at 6. It's going to be a great time. We had a bunch of people at our last watch party at Duffy's in North Miami Beach. Everybody's like, when are we coming back to Broward? We're coming back to Broward. So join us Wednesday night, 6 o'clock. Heat Sixers starts at 7. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here on 5 on the Floor. We're going to do things a little bit differently today, Alf. We're going to get to some news first before we get to the analysis. I had this last night, so I had it before the Mavericks game, but I decided to hold it till the morning. Made the mistake of teasing it on Twitter. Everybody got upset at me because if you tease news, everyone assumes it's a trade, particularly if it's right before a significant NBA milestone date, which is December 15th, when more players around the league are eligible to be traded. So no one has been traded. As far as I know, no one will be traded by the time we record this podcast. But Dion Waiters was suspended again. You guys were familiar with that. 3rd suspension of the year, 14 games total. This one is 6 games. But everybody's like, why, right? Like continued insubordination. Why was he suspended again? Well, Alf, you want to ask the question why he was suspended again?
Ethan, why was Dion suspended again?
Well, Alf, here's the reason for that. Because Dion likes to use Instagram, as a lot of people do. He has about 360,000 followers on his @Waiters3 account, which, by the way, is now private. I don't know if it was always private, but at some point, he posted a photo either as a story, which if you're not familiar with Instagram, stories disappear after 24 hours unless they're archived, or as a post. I'm not sure exactly which because we've never actually seen this post, but the Heat did. And it was apparently since taken down. But it is Dion hanging out, having a great time in a boat, which is something that people like to do in South Florida, particularly if you want to take a cruise to Waiters Island, right? Like you would get on a boat. The problem with this, Alf, you want to ask what the problem was?
What was the problem with that, Ethan?
The problem with that is that he told the Heat he was sick. So he was unavailable to them. And
yeah, that's a bad move. I mean, that's like rule number 1 of calling out sick. If your bosses follow you on social media, do not post any pictures of having a good time. Just sit that day out.
Correct. I mean, usually what you're concerned about in a situation such as that is that somebody else will post a photo of you, right? Like, so you're like, please, no pictures. I don't really want anybody to know what I'm doing, right? Like that would, that's the normal approach to this. You don't post.
Yeah, you don't do it to yourself. You don't do it to yourself ever.
Right. So apparently he did this to himself. The Heat saw this. I want to be very clear, though, and Barry Jackson basically confirmed my report afterwards to the Miami Herald, and he did credit us. Thank you, Barry. You're one of the few. But Barry came out because now everybody's crediting Barry, which that's how this works in this business. But anyway, Barry did credit us, and Barry added a little bit to this, but did confirm this. This was not just about this boating incident. Okay, it's not just that. But this was kind of the primary thing this time. This is a cumulative thing. There were a couple of more incidents, my understanding, since the last 7-game suspension, which he apologized to his team for publicly, right? And now, but this thing with the boat kind of triggered everything, and there were some other things. But again, timeline here. There were problems last season. Remember the whole rehabilitation. It goes all the way back to the ankle injury from the previous season. The whole rehabilitation and his conditioning, the way he decided to go about it, whether to have surgery, not to have surgery. The issues kind of started there. Then they decided to give him a fresh start this offseason. But remember, Alf, it came after Riley said, I let the culture slip, right? And we've seen what he's done with James Johnson. And then what they did with Dion, they weren't going to let the culture slip anymore. So, that was put into place, but it was, okay, Dion, here's a fresh start. Shows up to training camp. He felt he was in shape. Remember, I was there that day with Alex up in West Palm. I was there with Alex and Anthony Chang. And Spoelstra said, well, he's not in Miami Heat shape, which then we went to Dion, and Dion wasn't really that thrilled with that. Then there was something else about kind of the way they wanted him to play, and Dion seemed to have a different idea about that. And then, of course, there was the 1-game suspension, the sort of goofing off on the bench or making it clear he wasn't happy on the bench. And then also the Instagram post about Eric Spoelstra implying that Eric, only won championships because he had the big 3. So that was one suspension. Then there was the second suspension, which was the flight out to Los Angeles for a Laker game. And Dion had the issue with the THC infused gummies. And then this. I've heard there have been other incidents that have not been reported, and one of the reasons that the Heat are so frustrated with him is they felt like they were I wouldn't say covering stuff up, but they were trying not to embarrass Dion publicly about some other stuff. And so they just feel like they keep getting slapped in the face. Any thoughts on this before I get to what they do next?
I mean, like I've said before, I just think it's really sad. I think Dion actually had an opportunity this year that other people are taking advantage of. Like you see Derrick Jones Jr. the last few games has been playing really well. Kendrick Nunn, Goran Dragic, Tyler Hero. There's a lot of these minutes that could have been some of them could have been Dion's, but he kind of blew it. And you just got to wonder what's going on with Dion himself that he's basically it's almost like he's self-sabotaging his career. We talked about you're posting pictures on a day you're supposed to be homesick. You're putting these things out there on social media with an organization who is known for zero tolerance and not playing games. And maybe the culture slipping the last few years made Dion think he can get away with this stuff. Jimmy in town and the team doing well, they don't need him. So why would they? Why are they going to put up with this crap? So to me, it's sad. I wonder, it's not, I don't think he'll ever play for the Heat again. I think that's pretty obvious. But will he ever play in the NBA again? Or is his next stop going to be like Israel or Greece? Because who is going to want to take on this headache for a guy who outside of half of a season and some good 6-man minutes in Oklahoma City, who's going to want to take on that headache for the kind of production that Dion offers?
Well, and so that gets to what the Heat do now, because it was reinforced to me again last night by the 3 people I spoke to that there's been no market for him. Absolutely zilch. I mean, no interest whatsoever. And so now there's less, right? And so, what are their options? And I thought Albert and Ahmed, kind of summarized these pretty well. Barry did as well today, which is, option number 1 is to try to trade him. Okay, they've tried to do that. They don't want to attach an asset. An asset would be, at this point, a Justise Winslow or a Derrick Jones Jr., all right, pretty much. They don't have their full, group of second-round picks because they've gotten rid of a lot of those. You can only trade first-round picks in opposite years. They do have a lot of them coming back into the fold now, but why would you want to dump a first-round pick just to get rid of Dion at this stage? So the trade possibility, even though, like I said, December 15th, it opened up a lot, there's really nothing there. Okay, so what are their other options? Well, you could stretch him. Okay, they stretch Ryan Anderson, though. They can't stretch Dion this year. They could stretch his contract next year, but that means $4 million, essentially, a little more than $4 million of dead cap for 3 seasons starting.
And it doesn't even free up space.
No, it doesn't free up space, and they're already doing this with Ryan Anderson. So, they've already got this with one guy. So do you really want to do it with another guy? So that's not a great option. Okay, so the only options at this point have to do with coming to some kind of a meeting of the minds with Rich Paul, which is a complicating factor here because, Rich is now Dion's agent. As we know, Rich and the Heat did not – I don't know what the relationship is now, but it wasn't great when LeBron left because he's LeBron's guy. And so, you've got a situation now where you have to come to an agreement. Either you try to work out a buyout, all right, but Dion's got to be willing to give up money. Barry wrote pretty much what I've heard as well, which is that Dion's not willing to give up any money. He's in denial about this. So you can't do that. So the other question is you could keep suspending him. Well, at some point, the Players Association is going to jump in, right? And you're going to end up with a long dispute. Or you just, you send him away with pay, I guess. And he can go on as many boats as he wants. And I thought it was funny because Barry wrote this, and it's true. If they're sending him away, then he doesn't have to conform to Riley's conditioning standards anymore. So he can go on a cruise. He can go eat at the buffet. Like, nobody's going to stop him, right? But I don't know what you do. At this point, I don't think it's hurting the team. And we're going to get to basketball in a second. They're doing pretty damn well. So but you're right. They could have used him in that back-to-back. They don't have, other than Jimmy, they don't have a second guy. They don't have a second guy right now when we're going to talk a lot about Winslow in this episode. They don't have a second guy to break down the defense, get to the basket, and make some plays for himself and others. They don't
these games without Goran and Winslow, he would have definitely gotten minutes. Yes. Definitely. Yes. Because he has played a little point guard for this team, especially that 30-11 year. Actually, he played a lot of point guard. He initiated the offense a lot. And one thing about Dion, we call him a black hole, but he can pass. He can initiate. He can set up other guys, and they could have used him. And especially when he's engaged and healthy, his defense as well is pretty damn strong. So yeah, there was a huge opportunity for him this year, and they really could have used him. And here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And no one has ever said Dion can't play basketball. Like, this is these people that are on Twitter. We've got one guy. I did a 305 Live today, which is still on the Twitter feed. We got one guy. He goes by a fake name, but he's just sitting on there bashing the Heat organization for this. I don't know if it's Dion's burner. I'm not sure. But I don't know what you want the Heat to do. Again, I know more about this than has been reported. All right. Now, some of the details are starting to trickle out, but when you start to put all these pieces together, they're being very protective of their quote unquote culture, right? They made it clear after last season, and I mentioned that between Riley and Spoelstra that they were just not going to tolerate it anymore. And so, and then they come out with the James Johnson thing. And JJ, they're not angry at JJ, is my understanding, but he still has not worked his way back into any semblance of the rotation. Now he's got some personal issues to attend to, which I heard are legitimate. But he can't work his way back in. What did Dion expect? And none of this has been about basketball. So, this is a situation where, again, they got duped by a guy on a make good contract who said all the right things. I don't want to replay the whole situation.
That damn article, man. That damn article.
Players Tribune. Blame Derek Jeter. He owns that thing, right? Players Tribune. But I don't – there's nowhere for them to go with it right now other than keep them away from the team. This team – look how young this team is. How many guys do they have who are 25 or under? Justice, DJJ, Bam, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Chris Silva. I just named 6. I think there's a 7th. They've got – and KZ Akpala. They've got 7 guys on this team, 6 of whom are contributing, who are 25 or under. They don't have that many veterans. They've got Udonis, Dragic, and Butler, right? And I guess Olynyk is a young vet, and Myers is a young vet. But they don't have that many vets. So they don't need somebody in who's has this kind of – again, between the drugs, the playing hooky, the trashing the coach, the complaining about playing time, the complaining about, role. And when I say role, it's not just playing time. It was also the way he wanted to play. I asked him and I like Dion. I asked Dion in training camp, about, kind of was he going to look for his shots, more from 3 or at the basket this year. And he talked about, the analytics and all that. I don't really believe in that. If somebody goes under the screen, you shoot it. And again, that's fine. But it's contrary to kind of the way the Heat wanted him to play. So they have not been on the same page for any of this. I think the most likely solution at this point is they're just going to send him away with pay. That's it.
Yeah, that's what I see happening. That's not the waving, the stretching, the buyout. None of this. Only way you could see maybe a buyout is if Dion puts basically basketball ahead of money, because I don't see. He has to know that if he sits out a whole 2 NBA seasons, basically 2.5, basically since last year, 2.5 NBA seasons, nobody's picking him up in 2021.
Right.
Unless he says, okay, I'll take the buyout and then try out for some teams over the summer and maybe gets picked up somewhere on a vet minimum, but he's going to be losing a lot of cash. So I don't see it happening. So at the end of the day, he's going to be sent home with pay, and it's going to be one of the weirdest things in Miami Heat history. One of the weirdest contract situations where they're just paying a guy to sit at home, go to buffets, and eat on a boat.
Yeah. That's basically where they're at. I mean, the Smush Parker thing was odd. I mean, they've had some strange situations. Remember Rafer Alston disappeared? There was more to that story too.
Oh yeah, Rafer and Smush were weird.
Right, so there's been a couple. I mean, it's not. I mean, they've had some crazy stuff. I mean, they've had. I mean, there's legendary stories. I remember Todd Day training camp. Like basically, from what I remember, like Riley told him to go home and never come back. There's been some stuff. And there's been dissension behind the scenes over the years. I mean, may rest in peace, Anthony Mason. Remember that All-Star year? And then Zoe came back, and Mason spent the entire kind of last month of the season and that very short playoff run. It was 3 games, actually, I think, against Mash's team, right? Again, after the trade, it's Mash and PJ's team. He spent the whole time moping. I mean, they've had, obviously Whiteside. I mean, things are never going to be totally perfect, but the Heat have had, I would say, a lot fewer of these situations than other teams. No team is immune from them. I mean, Kawhi Leonard is arguably the best player in the world right now. I don't know. I mean, it's him or Giannis, right? Or LeBron at his highest level. One of the 2 best organizations in the sport, in my view, the San Antonio Spurs, could not agree with him on conditioning stuff. Could not agree with him in terms of getting on the same page as his legendary Hall of Fame coach, who basically helped mold him, right? So this stuff happens. It's not totally out of the realm of the usual, but it's just the way that this is happening, where it seems like Dion is kind of spiraling in a way that I guess we saw Antonio Brown spiral a little bit, right? So I think we've and I hope it works out for everybody, but at this point I don't see how he ever plays for the Heat again. We said that about a month ago. I mean, nothing has happened to reverse that. It's only accelerated it. All right, we're going to go to break here in a second. When we come back, we're going to talk about 2 things. We're going to talk about Justise Winslow, and then we're going to talk about these last 2 games and kind of get into where the Heat are right now. Right back after a word from Alf.
It's Alf here to talk to you about our newest sponsor, Gym Unity. Gym Unity is a personal training facility in Plantation, Florida, headed up by my good friend Mark Decker. Mark and his staff provide high-quality personal training and one-on-one sessions to get you into the best shape of your life. What's the Gym Unity difference? Gym Unity is dedicated to personalizing your experience and coming up with the best workout for your specific needs. The staff actually listens to you, the customer, and tailors your workouts to get the best results. Whether it's pre- or post-rehab, weight loss, or getting student athletes ready for the upcoming season, Gym Unity provides the best personal training anywhere in South Florida. So call Mark and the staff at 661-607-3571 to set up your free evaluation, or even hit them up on Instagram at Gym Unity. That's 661-607-3571 for Gym Unity. And back to the show.
All right, back here on the 5 on the Floor podcast. Again, of course, check out our watch party Wednesday night, Heat Sixers, 6 o'clock, Gold Club Pompano. Got any questions, just send me a DM at 5 Reasons Sports. All right, next topic today, before we get to the games, and usually we do these game recaps right after. I know it's been a couple days by the time you hear this from that Laker game, so we'll touch on it. But I really want to get to one of the issues with this team, and it's still Justise Winslow. And he is the most polarizing player on the Heat, which is weird to me. It's weird to me in the way Ryan Tannehill was polarizing with the Dolphins, because Justise is not a guy who makes any enemies, really. I mean, so it's just personality-wise. So I don't know. Let's start here before we get to why we want to talk about Justise.
I was going to say, he's made a lot of enemies on Twitter somehow.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so you and I live on Twitter, right? Much more than we should.
Definitely.
Are we overreacting to a few people trying to get quote unquote clout on Twitter, as opposed to what the Heat fan base really thinks. Like the general Heat fan base, are they like putting Justise Winslow in the trade machine every 15 minutes? Like, or are we overreacting, to maybe a handful of people, some of whom we know have no credibility, who are just, have a thing for justice? It seems to be a lot of the same people, for whatever reason, that were, would defend Hassan Whiteside at every turn and say he should be playing over Bam Adebayo. We see what people know about basketball. I mean, what, are we overreacting to this? Before we get to something that I think is a legitimate, there are legitimate issues we can talk about with Justise Winslow. The one issue I don't think you can talk about and be, given any respect as somebody who follows or understands basketball, is to make the argument that they're better off without Justise, because I think they're 13-3 playing without him. It reminds me of that without Wade thing. Remember that? Like that was
it's nonsense.
Right. Remember that? But that was a hashtag for a while, without Wade, right? It was like the second or third year of the big three, maybe it was a fourth year. And because they were playing better by not playing better, but they were winning games by putting James Jones or Mike Miller or somebody else in that slot. So it had to have been one of the first 3 seasons. Because Miller wasn't there the fourth year. But it was ludicrous, though. I mean, you're not better without Dwayne Wade. Now, I'm not saying Justise is Dwayne Wade, but to say that they couldn't have used another creator in the past couple games, that they, to take the burden off Jimmy, that they couldn't have used another defender against, as good a job as Derek Jones Jr. did, that, maybe LeBron doesn't get off in that game if he's got to see Justise also, right, for 15 to 20 minutes. I don't know how you can make a credible basketball argument about that stuff, but are we overreacting to a few, like I said, people chasing clout?
What the thing with Justise that I see overall is the people who are more analytical, the quote unquote stat guys, the people who look into the numbers more. Justise has become kind of the analytical darling of Heat Twitter, of the side of Heat Twitter that cares about net rating, on-off numbers, all, just the advanced stuff. So he's become this analytical darling of that crowd, and somehow there's the other crowd just resents that. I guess I don't know if it's like schoolyard bully nerd thing. I don't know exactly what's going on, but it's also the same. So you get the people who aren't into the numbers, aren't into the analytics, and they're usually the guys who love a guy like Hassan Whiteside or Dion Waiters, somebody who just puts up big counting stats, the points, the rebounds, the blocks, the assists, that top layer of numbers that is just really easy to consume. So I understand where some people are coming from when they don't like Justise, because he's not flashy. A lot of the things he does for the team don't show up in box scores. And if you're not paying attention to the net ratings and on-off numbers and defensive ratings, and you're not peeling through bballreference.com, like, you're not going to see all this stuff. So it's just easier to just come out there and just look at the top layer and say he's no good, because he 14 points a game, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. It's not jumping off the page at you. Plus he had so much hype coming in. So now what the percentage is of fans who are quote unquote hate Justise, I think it's the same thing that you see on Twitter. It's about like 60-40 probably. You got 60% of the fan base that are going to support the guy just because he's a Heat player. They see what he does on the court. And then you're going to have the other 40% that for some reason want to just tear the kid down.
Well, I think I think among the Heat fan base, I think there's probably more support than that, honestly. I think we're overreacting to a few people. I just think they're shrill. I think they're shrill, and I think a lot of them, frankly, just don't understand a lot of the game. Now, I don't want to say, in certain aspects of the game, I don't understand as much as others. I mean, you put me in a room with Cooper Moorhead or Nekias Duncan, and my eyes are going to be rolling back in my head, because those guys are so smart about basketball, and there's certain things that I don't see. But the certain things that I do see from doing this for 25 years and covering Eric Spoelstra, pretty much from the very beginning, right? And especially since he became a head coach, is I do have a trust in the guys that Eric plays a lot, okay? Because he's smart. And there's a reason he's playing a guy so many minutes, because he sees something. It doesn't mean he's always right. It doesn't mean even that I always agree. But like, I understand why he would want to use a guy like Justise Winslow, and I understood why he stuck with him a couple of years ago when he hadn't played well most of the year and put him in a playoff series against Philadelphia. And he was, even though his stats in that series were not great, he was one of the Heat's most impactful players and changed the energy of games. So I'm going to trust the people who know more than me, and the people who know more than me still trust Justise Winslow when he's playing. Now, let's get to the next topic, because I think there is a topic with Justise that we should talk about, which is that he's not available very much. And I think both you and I have downplayed this a lot. He's basically missed a third of his games. Okay. And I'm not just talking about this year. I'm talking about going back now. And I think we need to, guys get a label of being injury prone. I hate the label injury prone because a lot of injuries are luck, right? And some of them take more time to come back from. To me, the only injuries that you can blame a player for are ones that are conditioning related, okay? Or maybe a guy just doesn't have the highest pain tolerance, and that's why he sits out longer than he should. I think those are things we can look at with Justise. But now the head injury, which, we all said he probably shouldn't have gone back in that game against Denver. I'm never going to criticize a guy for missing time for a head injury, particularly when he's in the NBA's concussion protocol. So to me, those games that he missed for the head injury, I'm throwing those out. Okay. Like I'm not gonna make a big deal of those. Now this latest thing, and how long it's taking him to come back from this and some of the other situations that he's had, I think we can have a reasonable conversation about whether or not the Heat can go forward with Justise as a core piece if he's going to be missing as much time as he's missed for those kind of things, not for the head injury. Do you think that's a fair conversation to have?
I really do, and this is something I'm just coming around to lately, actually. And like you said before, I did a lot of defending of him and defending the time missed, defending his play on the court. But we've come to this point now that the Heat are winning without him, but we see it loud and clear right in front of our face how what an addition he could be if he was out there. And you sent me the numbers yesterday. I think it was a guy on Twitter, Dr. Pablo something, who's actually a real life doctor.
Yeah, the great Pablo Pistola, I believe.
Pablo Pistola.
Yes. He's
missed 113 out of 353 career regular season games. Now we know a lot of that came that second year, but it didn't end there. It seems to be there's continuing issue after issue after issue, and they're always different. You have the back strain, you have the knee problem, you have this, you have that. Now, listen, I'm not in the training room. I don't know his body. I don't know what he's actually going through. But maybe this time start having the conversation of what is, I hate the injury prone label too, because that sometimes doesn't make any sense. Right. But what is going on with Justise Winslow that he just can't seem to sustain long stretches on the floor without missing time due to injury?
And I don't want to be unfair to Justise in another way. Goran Dragic has missed a lot of time recently too, right? So I don't want to be unfair and just put Justise sort of on, we're doing a Waiters episode, a Waiters island here. When I want to put him on an island and say it's just Justise that's been nicked. They've missed Goran in some ways. They've missed Goran more than Justise lately because they missed that scoring off the bench, and they've had to. I give them credit for what they've done to get to 19-7 and nearly win the Laker game. Probably could have won the Laker game if not for that bad call at the end, and then obviously to pull out the Dallas game, whether Luka or no Luka. But they've missed Goran too, and Goran has had trouble staying out. But Goran is in his early 30s, right? There's an expectation that a guy in his early 30s has to be managed, particularly a guy who plays the way Goran plays, right? He plays. I mean, not that Justise doesn't play hard. Justise plays hard. But, Goran is on the floor a lot. Goran is smaller in build than Justise is. Goran plays in the paint quite a bit. At least he used to, even more than he does now. So I don't want to say it's just Justise. They miss Goran too. But I will tell you this, okay? I'm trying to put a delicate way of putting this out, so let me put it out there. I have not heard anything from anybody inside the organization about Goran and being concerned about this lack of availability, other than he's an older guy and we kind of need to manage it in some ways the way we managed Dwayne. Okay. I have heard some of it about Justise, not from everybody, but a little bit of, okay, we need him on the floor. He's 23. He's a young, strong guy. We need him out there more often. So I think it is a reasonable conversation to have at this stage. Like, okay, is he seriously injured, or is he just hurt and has a pain tolerance situation where, he needs to come back maybe a little sooner and try to play through it? Those are things I think we need to monitor, because even taking the head injury out, okay, he still has missed roughly, I just did the numbers, about 26% of his games in the NBA. All right, even if you take the head injury out of the equation, so it's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, that's the kind of thing. Blake Griffin. I'm not comparing Justice to Blake as a player, but Blake Griffin, got a reputation to be Joel Embiid. I mean, these, they played about 60 to 70% of available games. I mean, that's about where Justice is right now. And if he's that way at 23 in the Heat program, where is he going to be at 26, 27, 28? I just think it's a reasonable conversation to have, without getting into the bustus idiots and all the rest of that who can't see his value on the floor. We wouldn't be talking about him, Alf, and his availability if we didn't think he had value to the team. He does, okay? He does. And so that's the one thing I think that's still on the table for them this year, is they need to figure out the connection offensively between Jimmy and Justice, and whether it's going to work down the stretch of games. And they just have not had the opportunity to do it because, Jimmy missed a little time at the beginning of the season, but mostly because Justice has been out.
Well, and then here's the other question. Over the summer, you and I, we harped over again that he should be the starting point guard. So I think a lot of Heat fans agreed, and he came in as the starting point guard. How do you justify putting him back in the starting lineup now after missing so much time? How are you going to disrupt the chemistry? When you look at the numbers for the starting five this year, they're one of the best 4 and 5 man units in the entire league. So how do you justify putting Justice back in that lineup, especially not just because when he comes back, okay, but you never know when he's going to miss more time again. So how do you get into a rhythm in that way? And also, Justice is a kind of player that we've seen him when in new situations, it's sometimes it gets off to a rough start, like it has with Jimmy, like it did with Goran, where he was standing around a lot of time. Justice needs reps and time on the floor. How do you get that consistently if he's not healthy enough to suit up night after night? If he's going to miss 1 out of every 5 or 1 out of every 4 or 1 out of every 3 games, there's no consistency. You can't get a rhythm.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why I said, I mean, this is something that, look, what are they now? 26 games in the season. They're roughly a third of the way into the season. You need to start to figure some of that stuff out. I don't think Justice comes back into the starting lineup when he comes back. I don't think the starting lineup is going to be changed for a while. I think we are where we are with it. I know we've talked about, Hero and Olynyk possibly getting in there. I don't know that Kelly's been consistent enough to really. I know you talk about, a lot of people talk about he needs reps too, and the ball needs to be in his hands. I don't know that he's been consistent enough to justify that at this stage. And we've seen with Hero, since he had the 27-point explosion, he had a couple of rough games. He had a bounce back against Dallas. I know he was sick for one of those 2 games. That was a rough game. But, I mean, Nunn's outplayed him the past 3 games overall. So I don't know that you can justify that move. And I don't think there's any way you can justify taking Duncan out right now. You just can't. I mean, he's too important to their spacing, and he's gotten so much better. I really recommend people listen to the episode I did with Andy Ellisberg and Adam Simon, 2 Heat executives, about the G League, but for all of it, but primarily for the discussion about Duncan, because it kind of exemplifies everything the Heat organization is trying to do, developing players in one guy. All right, so check that out. We're going to get to a new type of segment here after the break, but first, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's the Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. You can check them out 24 hours a day at onecalllegal.com. Onecalllegal.com. That's spelled out O-N-E. They handle cases from all over the state and all kinds of different specialties of law, but particularly personal injury, traffic, tickets, immigration, and much, much more. They're based in North Miami. We actually share an office with them. So go say hello to David, Eric, and everybody else at Seltzer Mayberg. If you need help with a problem, which a lot of people do, all kinds of different problems that they can handle for you, onecalllegal.com. Mention 5 Reasons when you go. All right, Alf, we're not going to dwell on the 2 games individually. I don't want to nitpick officiating and the calls at the end, the 2-minute report, which I know Dwayne used to rail against the 2-minute report. What's the point of the 2-minute report? It just makes people angry, right? And it just made people angry because They missed 2 calls on Jimmy Butler's last shot. One was a foul before the shot, LeBron James. Another was a foul during the shot, Anthony Davis. Jimmy goes to the line. I think he makes all 3. Maybe he doesn't. But either way, he would have had the opportunity. And then the Dallas game, missing Luka. I have one takeaway from the 2 games, and I want to get your takeaway from the 2 games. Bam Adebayo is already elite. I think we've been having these kind of conversations like, who's the Heat's second most important player? Could he be a candidate for MIP, most improved player, and all the rest? I mean, those conversations are moot at this point. He is a candidate for most improved player. In fact, in my view, him and Devonta Graham from Charlotte are the front runners for that. And Bam's team is winning. And he's going to be an all-star. He's going to be the Heat's second all-star in Chicago. There's no way the coaches aren't going to put him on the team. No way, okay? He's going to be an all-star. And so I just think that's where we are with him. I was looking at, some of the defensive metrics today, and it's basically him, Drummond, and Giannis as the 3 top guys in the league for defense. I think it's defensive, box, plus minus.
They have that TPA stat. He's number 1. He's right. You're right. It's Giannis, Andre, and Bam. No matter how you look at the defensive numbers, he's right now. You can solidly put him in as a top 3 defensive player in the league right now.
Correct, and he's a top 2 passing center in the league right now, along with Jokic. He's having a better year than Jokic. Look at the numbers across the board. I mean, I don't know that there are more than 3 bigs having a better season than him. He is, and I'm going to put it out there right now. I mean, I love the season that Jimmy's having. I love him from a leadership perspective. He's been everything you want and more. Just like, Eric used to talk about Chris Bosh being the Heat's most important player. And a lot of people scoffed at that. And when you had LeBron James at, the peak of his powers and you still had Dwayne Wade on the roster, I think right now Bam Adebayo is the Heat's most important player. Like, if I was to say, can you lose Jimmy for 3 weeks and survive it, provided that the rest of your roster is healthy, right? Provided that Justise is back and Goran is back, can you survive it? I think you can survive it. Can you take Bam off this team for 3 weeks and survive it?
They would have to change everything they do defensively because he's so important of basically how they run their entire scheme. You'd have to change everything. It makes Myers Leonard and Kelly Olynyk different players. He allows you to play guys like Duncan Robinson against tough matchups because, I'm not going to say anything bad about Duncan Robinson's defense. He's actually been quite good this year. But your Duncan Robinsons, Tyler Heroes, Kendrick Nunn, some of your guys who are not as elite defensively as, let's say, a Jimmy Butler, a Justise Winslow, or a Bam. You're able to make more mistakes, right? Because Bam is out there to clean things up. So without Bam, some of these guys are not as playable as they are right now. So 3 weeks without Bam, I mean, it would be a harder adjustment in my eyes than losing Jimmy. But I will disagree with you there. I think Jimmy's still their most important player because of the closing aspect and because he's there night after night. And if you didn't have Jimmy, I mean, you just couldn't score. I mean,
well, right. He sets a lot of other guys up. I think, maybe they could, and we'd have to see Justise and Goran for long stretches, right? Like, I think part of it is we say they could. I mean, the season opener, they scored a bunch, right? It took them a while against Memphis the first time, and that's their opponent that's coming up. They were down actually through 3 quarters by 1, I believe. But Justise made every play in the 4th quarter for them. And so I think he's capable of doing it, but like we've talked about, there's availability issues there. There's availability issues with Goran. I mean, you could spread the floor and still have some success. I just think defensively, I don't know what you would do. I guess he'd probably start Silva for him, I would think, rather than go small and play Myers maybe with Derek Jones Jr., as the 4. He could do that, or maybe even just put Kelly in the starting lineup possibly. But I just don't think they can afford to lose him. I mean, he made, again, we talk about making plays down the stretch. I mean, Bam made the majority of the significant plays down the stretch. I know people are getting a little tired of kind of the Jimmy pull-up 3 in those situations, kind of the kill 3. It reminds me of Dwayne. But Bam was their best player down the stretch last night, and he's been their most, I think, consistent guy this season in a lot of ways. There's some things he still needs to improve on. He needs to take that jumper more often. I feel like Spoelstra at some point needs to trust him to play, without foul trouble or through foul trouble, so he can play the best big on the other team defensively more often. But he's a top 12 player in the Eastern Conference right now. He's an all-star. Like I'm going to Chicago for All-Star Weekend. He will be playing in the game. That's to me, when you're 22 and you're an all-star already, you're elite. That's where it doesn't mean there's no room for growth, but you're elite.
And what he's done offensively, one of the things over the last few years would drive me crazy watching him is he'd be face up to the basket and he just would not look to score. He always looked to pass, always looked for the pocket pass. And there's great that he's a really good passer for a big. He's an elite passing big, if you want to call him that. But he was never looking for his own offense. He is starting to look for his own offense. He had a Hakeem Olajuwon dream shake yesterday.
That was insane.
My! But we've seen him do that with Chris Bosh in practice. Mm-hmm. We've seen him do that stuff in an open gym. And sometimes I feel like he doesn't trust his own athleticism at times. But if he's playing some of these slow-footed bigs, he can do that more and more often. He did the little fake Jason Williams behind the back pass and a little flip into the basket the other day. The things that this guy can do, the skill set that he has, I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Well, I feel we've underrated it. I think that as high as you and I were on him, when Derrick Jones Jr. came on our podcast last year and said that Bam's a better dunker than him because he's more athletic, you kind of laugh at it, but then you're like, okay, it's a high bar, but it's not so crazy. I talked to someone close to Jimmy this week who said Jimmy it's not just that they've become friends. He's overwhelmed with Bam's potential. Basically he said he's never played with the big, quite like this on both ends. That's what was put to me. Now, he's played with Karl-Anthony Towns, and Towns has become a much better defender this season. But Bam's defensive upside is higher than Towns is, right? So and in Chicago he played with Noah, but that was all hustle, heart, energy, etc. Right? We know, Joakim, also a great passer, by the way, in his prime, but not a skilled offensive player. Look at that shot, right? So Jimmy has not, and then he goes to Philadelphia and he played with Embiid briefly, but. Again, what I was told was on both ends, he feels that Bam's upside, is right there with him or perhaps higher. So, there's things that Embiid does that Bam doesn't do yet or may never do. But there are some things that Bam does that nobody else in the league can do. I just can't do it. And the other thing about Bam, we talk about availability, Alf. He never misses a game. Never misses a game. There was a question about him last week, and he played. He played all 82 last season. So I think that's a big deal. One takeaway from you from the last two games.
The takeaway, and we've talked about it a little bit. I wish we talked about it a lot. They need Justice and Goran back, and they're getting away with it right now. But they need those guys back because those are both of your point guards. Those are the guys who set up offense, who carry you through stretches of the game. Because Jimmy has to rest at some point. Yesterday they played 8 guys on a back-to-back on the road. They only played 8 guys yesterday. And we've seen the end of games where Jimmy looks exhausted because he's having to carry the load, so not just defensively, and he's having to carry the load offensively as well. So he's missing Justice on the defensive side of the floor, where Justice could pick up some of these these tougher matchups and spell him a little bit. And they're missing him when he goes to the bench, when Goran would come in there, and Goran would give you 18, 19, 20, 21 points a night. So without those two guys right now, there are stretches of the game, and we saw it against the Lakers. You saw it last night. You saw it. Who'd they play the game before? With the Bulls?
I think it was Atlanta, right? Tuesday.
Atlanta. You saw even against Atlanta. There's just these stretches of the game where offensively it just looks bad, and they need Goran for those stretches. And so that's my biggest takeaway. They've survived some of these injury issues. But going forward, they're going to have to figure something out. They need Justice. They need Goran back. They need to stop playing Jimmy high 30s, low 40 minutes. All these overtime games is going to come back to bite them later.
It's not just the minutes in the ball handling. It's that I think one of the reasons that Jimmy's shooting numbers are down so much is because there's no one setting him up. I feel like he can't get in a rhythm. The ball's in his hands all the time. He's trying to create for others. He's not a great jump shooter to begin with. And he's got a flat jumper. We've talked about it. I feel like he needs his legs into it. He hasn't had his legs in some situations. They're not really able to run anything to get him a little bit of space where maybe he can get more to the mid-range game. Everything has basically been to the basket, which is great. He's getting to the line. But I just feel like, if there's somebody else who's getting him the ball on the block, right, where I think he's really good and creates mismatches, there's somebody else who's getting him, to space, somewhere between 12 and 15 feet, or maybe even getting him a corner three, in terms of with a little bit more time on a possession. They haven't had that because there's no one else on the team who can do it with that. I mean, Tyler Hero might get there eventually. It's not Kendrick Nunn's skill set, right? So there's no one else who can do it. So they need Dragic or Winslow back. I agree with you. All right, new segment here on the pod, and then we're going to get to our new sign-off. And again, I remind you about the Gold Club, 6 o'clock on Wednesday. We went a little longer today on this episode, but there's been a lot to get to. We're introducing something based on our podcast name. What's our 5 on the floor? So let's get to the next couple of games. We've got Memphis coming up and Philadelphia. Down the stretch of games, Alf, who should be the Heat's 5 on the floor?
All right, well, I'm gonna skip over Memphis because I honestly don't even know who's on their roster. So we're gonna go to
the likely rookie of the year. And by the way, Jaren Jackson's pretty damn good too. He had 43 the other night, including I think 6 threes. There's some young talent there, so don't sleep on them long term. They'll have energy, but it's a game you should win. I agree.
I'm sleeping on them for tomorrow because I really want to get to the Sixers matchup. For the Sixers, the 5 on the floor probably should be. Are we counting Justise and Goran, or are we just leaving them out right now?
Well, look, I don't think Goran's going to be back in the next couple games. Don't hold me to it, but from what I heard about the injury when it first happened, he felt it was pretty bad. We're 2 weeks. I always heard it'd be 2 or more, but it could be 3 or more. So I don't think they'll have Goran. I think it's possible they'll have Justise, but some of it comes down to these kind of pain management issues we talked about. Let's assume Justise, but no Goran.
So if we're assuming Justise is playing, you're gonna go. I would go with Justise, Hero, Duncan, Butler, Bam. I love the here. Yeah, it's small, but you don't going big against the Sixers isn't going to work because you don't have guys big enough.
Mm.
So you might as well take advantage and space the floor and try to get some of those bigs outside of the paint. And Bam has to do more from the perimeter. He has to shoot. He has to go at Embiid a little bit more than he has in the past. This whole Embiid just sagging off of him and basically playing free safety in the middle, a guy that Embiid's side, it just completely cuts off the paint. So there's going to be things that they have to do, but to me, the spacing of Hero and Robinson mixed with the defensive capabilities of those other 3 guys it's the way you have to go. And unless somebody else really has it going that night, Nunn has been playing really, really well. I just don't like him as much in the closing situations because I don't like some of the decisions he makes with the ball. And I think we've talked about it a lot. I was talking to Nekias Duncan at the game the other night. He misses a lot of these pocket passes, skip passes, different things he could do to open up the offense. He's not, in my opinion, he hasn't really gotten there yet. He's gotten better, but to close out a game, I trust Hero and Duncan more than I trust him to make the right pass and to make the right decision.
You know who I'm going to throw in the mix here as one of my 5 against Philadelphia, provided he's playing as well as he's played lately, is Derrick Jones Jr. I think there's a role for Derrick in this kind of situation. We saw it against the Lakers. Derrick plays well against length. He is length. Okay. And I think the energy. And the other thing you mentioned with Nunn and with DJJ, and I think some of this is Nunn has some tunnel vision, but I think some of this is a product of length of time in the Heat system that I feel like Derrick Jones Jr. has turned the corner now where he's consistently making the right play. Whereas I don't know that Nunn is there. I think Nunn is a more skilled offensive player than Derrick is by far. Much better ball handler, much better shooter, etc. But I feel like Derrick Jones Jr., like I don't have any of those moments with him like a year or so ago where it's like, ooh, okay, you got to get Derrick off the floor because he's not, he doesn't, like you said, he doesn't make the right pass or he doesn't rotate out to the right guy. Like I feel like he's doing all those things now. Like he's doing a lot of very subtle things for an athletic player. And it's intriguing to me. And I think against a team like Philadelphia, like, for instance, like, if whether you have Justise, don't have Justise. If you don't have Justise, he's definitely going to play those minutes. But if you
Definitely.
but if you do, even if you do have Justice, like to have another guy to throw. Let's say Josh goes off again, like he did the last game. Putting Derek on him is a way to control that a little bit. So I think you're going to see more of Derek Jones Jr. I think they've just kind of they were
But so who do you
a little bit and seeing where it would go, and I think it's been so encouraging. I think you're going to see more of it, particularly at the 4.
who do you take out?
Well, Bam and Jimmy, obviously, and Duncan. And I think basically then the 5th guy becomes, if it's Winslow, it's Winslow. If he's there, if it's Goran, like I said, I don't think it's going to be Goran, or it could be Hero, or it could be none, depending on circumstance. But I think that you're looking at, I think Bam, I think Duncan has made himself, almost an every night option in those
And
situations.
he hits clutch threes.
He hits clutch threes.
He's not afraid.
Affect him, and he's positionally, he's playing well defensively. He's not a plus rebounder, but he's holding his own in some of those situations. I don't have any issue with playing Duncan down the stretch of those games, and he gives you more size than Hero or none do. So, look, there's another reason. I'm going to come back to this. I think we close with this. This is another reason why I'm going to trust Erik Spoelstra more than I'm going to trust, like, some dude with, no headshot in his avatar on Twitter. Like, it's about playing certain guys, because it doesn't mean the coach is always right. We're going to be critical when there are situations that warrant it, or when there are mistakes that are made. But, like, look at some of the decisions that Eric's made this year. Like, everybody hated. I'm not going too far by saying everybody. Everybody hated how much Duncan was playing coming out of preseason because he couldn't make a shot, right? And look how that's been rewarded. So if Erik Spoelstra thinks that Justise Winslow, when available, is a 30-minute-a-game player, I'm going to trust Erik Spoelstra over, Bleepin' Blue Radio or whatever the names are. Okay, let's just go there. All right. So, is that a good way to close, Alf? Is that a good way to close?
Yeah, Bleepin' Blue Radio.
All right, come to our watch party. Alf's keeping his clothes on. We're gonna give you the shirts off our back, but not literally. 6:00 Wednesday night. We'll have another podcast coming up early in the week. Although one we're really looking forward to, Myers Leonard and L. Leonard, his wife, who is a better shooter than anybody on the Cleveland Cavaliers roster. Trust me.
I think it's Ellie.
Is it Ellie?
He says Ellie.
Okay, go with Ellie. All right, so Myers and Ellie Leonard are likely going to join us at some point this week. Thanks for joining us on 5 on the Floor.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.